Okay, guys, welcome to a very special edition of the Mario Mancini Show with your
You
host,
know,
Mario Mancini.
it kills
And
me
we've got,
when you say that it's the Mario Mancini show. It's
yeah,
GP.
yes, but
Um,
we've got your first guest tonight. We've talked about doing this for a while, and we're going to get a few guys on from the business that you
My
may or may
hero,
not
I'm in awe already.
well,
that
listen,
you may or may not have crossed paths with.
I feel the same way, man. Because listen, I'm really excited for this because I've never spoken to anyone other than the guys that were over. You know what I mean? Oh, I've spoken to guys from other territories and everything, but I never spoke to anybody who basically did the same thing I did week after week on TV
And we're
for
proud
another
of it.
for another organization. So I'm curious because this guy, I mean, out of the kindness of his heart, I don't know, he did like a 28-minute documentary on me, and at the end he said, maybe this was Mario's problem. And then he showed Dusty Rhodes and he showed Jerry Lawler, and he's like, maybe he would have been better off going to these places instead of getting out of turning 18. And at 6 weeks after my 18th birthday, I went right to the land of giants. I went right to the WWF. I was 18 years and 6 weeks old, man.
Wow.
So I can't wait to ask these questions. So listen, I want you to picture in your head. Now, let me start off by saying this now. Two guys that I worked with, Terry Funk and Harley Race. I worked with both of them. And they said, listen, son, I don't beat nobody. I beat somebody. So you're going to have a lot to do in there, right? I got to beat somebody, they'd say. Okay. Other than that, I mean, what year did you start?
I was, let me see, around 83, I think.
Okay, same
I started
thing.
with, and
Right, so
probably a couple years after you, because I remember I wanted to grow up to be like you. So
yeah, no, because I broke it a year after you. I broke it in 84.
Oh,
I broke it in 84. So I was in Poughkeepsie, New York. And you got a picture in your mind in Poughkeepsie, New York. You know, you go into that place and it's literally, I'm not kidding. It's literally 100 yards of hallway to the dressing room. I mean, it was forever in Poughkeepsie Mid-Hudson Civic Center. That's where they did TV taping. And so I walk in there and there's a big room. A big room with all chairs around in it. Just chairs. At the end of it was a bathroom and the showers. But Randy, to the left were two rooms. And those two rooms had recliners and couches in them. See the look on his face? See the look on his face, Maurice?
wow.
He knows where I'm going with this, right?
It was hard enough finding a metal chair that would sit level.
He knows where I'm going with this, right? So the real over guys got those rooms, and you weren't allowed to go in there. We weren't allowed to go in there. Mm-hmm. And, most of us got dressed outside. What was there a bigger camaraderie where you were a more of a respect for what you did, or was it extremely separated like it was for me? Like when I see Valentine now, I go, Hammer, why couldn't we be this close back then? And he goes, Mario's, it was just a different time. Me, Beefcake, those guys. It's like, why couldn't we be this DiBiase? Well, Ted and I were pretty close. There's Big Daddy, man. There's another guy, brother of mine for 38 years. So, was it that separated for you too, or was there a better camaraderie?
I think initially it was the same experience. The first time you go in, I mean, I've been a fan since I was like 7, 8 years old,
Yeah.
Kind of a historian type thing. Okay.
Yeah.
I was raised in Detroit along with the Sheik and Bobo Brazil and Dick the Bruiser would come in, old guys like that, Killer Kowalski. And of course, then I made my way down to South. So the first opportunity I got to do TV, NWA at the time, before Crockett bought it, and or before Turner bought it from Crockett. So here I am, like a kid in a candy shop. I mean, I'm walking in the locker room. I don't know anybody, except one little goofs that went with me. Okay, so we're scared. I'm afraid to look at anybody, much less make eye contact with them. And I don't know how it was with you, but I didn't know any of these guys beforehand. I mean, I was really green. So to walk into this big locker room, I guess, and you got Ricky Steamboat, you got Terry Funk, you got Dusty Rhodes in there, all kinds of guys. Then you got Jimmy Cornette running across there, and Paulie Dangerously running the other way, and they're jabbing their mouths. Did you get to know them well, Cornette or Heyman?
Cornette, I met Cornette. Well, I'm going to tell you, Paul Heyman. I'm going to tell you a horrible story. I met Cornette at the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, and I was really impressed because I was walking toward where the inductions were going to be, and he was coming off the bottom of an escalator, and I was walking toward him to shake his hand, and I put my hand out and I said, Jim, Mario Mancini, and he shook my hand. He goes, I know who you are. I went, oh, wow. Paul Heyman, what a great job on my part. So now he's just starting out. I mean, this is a skinny, penciled, skinny kid with the 80s hairdo. Okay.
The mullet.
Yeah. All right. Just starting out. And it's a Tony Altomar show. It's an independent show. We were running for a guy called Rocco LaPenta out of Avon, Connecticut. And Gino Carabello and I were working the show. And here comes this kid, this well-dressed kid, looking like he's out of Saturday Night Fever with the hair. He had freckles, real pale face, thin as can be. I go, who is that guy? Who's that guy? Goes, I don't know. So, it's kayfabe. So I go up and go, hey, who are you? He goes, oh, Mario, I'm Paul. I go, get out of here. He goes, I just want to talk to the guys. I go, you're not allowed in here. Get out. Get out. He goes, Mario, you kick me out. I go, get out. Happened another show. He came back in. I went back up to him. I said, I thought I told you not to come in here. You're not allowed in here. Get out. Kicked him out twice. Right? Big old Mario Mancini. I started watching wrestling when I was 7 years old. And the first wrestler I ever saw on that 12-inch black and white TV was Bruno Sammartino. And I was hooked. I just followed Bruno. I mean, 1977, Billy Graham beats him for the heavyweight title, puts his 2 feet on the second rope, to pin him. I'm 11 years old. I'm in tears. I mean, tears. 11 years old in tears. So now it's 1980, and there's an empty arena. Wrestling comes on. I'm 14. There's an empty arena, and Vince is sitting there with Bruno, and he goes, "Bruno, you got something to say to your fans?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm retiring." And that's when I looked at my family in the living room and I said, I'm going to be a pro wrestler. I'm going to wrestle for the WWF. I'm going to wrestle for them. And they said, are you nuts? I said, no, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to take Bruno's place. That didn't happen. I took Frank Williams's place. So
you lived the dream, didn't you?
Well, but here's the thing, man, just like you, right? So now I go to Poughkeepsie. It's my first night, July 31st, 1984. And Tony surprises us. Me, AJ Petrucci, Dave Barbie, and Seth Cohen, and says, you guys are working tonight. What? Yeah, you're working tonight. Go see Gorilla Monsoon. What? Because he had the contracts. So I go down there, and there's Piper, Snuka, Hogan, Morocco, Barry Windham, Mike Rotundo, the Iron Sheik, Nikolai Volkov. I'm like, it's like they came right out of the TV because we're still marks, right? We're still marks. So I'm like, holy shit. I got this poker face on, right? So Tony Altomar brings me over to Strongbow and he goes, this is Chief Jay Strongbow. And I wanted to look at him and go, no shit, I said, hi, Mr. Strongbow. He goes, what's your name? I go, Mario Mancini. What do you want me to do? He goes, see that chair? Sit down and keep your fucking mouth shut. Don't say anything. So I'm sitting in a chair. Bruno and Vince come down with those yellow canary jackets they wore doing the commentary. Right. Bruno backs up. The back of his foot hits the toe of my boot. I go, he looks back and he goes, excuse me. I go, and they walked away, and I ran down that 100-yard hallway, and I grabbed the payphone, and I called collect home to my brother. And I said, I just saw Bruno. He's like, did you tell him what he meant to you? I go, no, I don't have time for that. He hit my boot, So, yeah. Same thing.
The locker rooms were saying, and mine the same way. Growing up as a little kid, like I said, with the Sheik, it was his territory at the time, I guess, Detroit area. And my grandparents got me started as a little kid. I mean, I used to cover my face like this. Are they blooding yet? So here I am, where they walked down the aisle. It wasn't like Poughkeepsie, but it was just a Cobo Arena in Detroit. And so we'd stand right there just trying to get a glimpse of these guys in real life. They were heroes. And then, like I said, fast forward to here I am walking in this locker room, not knowing nothing or anyone. And funny you would mention Terry Funk. Terry Funk was the absolute best first impression I got in the business. I'll tell you why. Now there's me and a couple other little wrestlers, enhancement jobbers, whatever you want to call us. I don't care. We're sitting there in our little chairs, not knowing what to do or anything else because they hadn't come out with the sheet yet, who's working who or whatever. All we're going to know is we're going to be working. So, and then Jimmy Cornette comes by.
I'll play that.
And Jimmy Cornette is cracking jokes the whole time. He was the same off screen as he was on. But anyways, so we're sitting there like a bunch of scared little dogs with our tail between our legs. And here walking across the room, Terry Funk. He went up to every one of us, looked us in the eye, shook it. My name's Terry Funk. What's your name? It's so nice to meet you.
No ego.
Blown away. That was Terry Funk.
Absolutely 100%.
Cornette was, I loved Jimmy Cornette. I worked, I think, every one of his factions of the Midnight Expresses,
There's a question here for you, Randy.
Oh, can you tell us a road story or three that stand out in your mind?
Three?
He's probably looking for something.
Yeah, no, Big Daddy, we're leaving Ring Rats for another podcast. We're not doing
Oh gosh. So, anyways, I lost my train of thought. Anyways, so we're in there, and Jimmy Cornette comes by, and I'm going to work him. And of course, the guys, until they got to know you, probably like you, they're very standoffish. It's maybe they're trying to feel you out, to see how much of a mark you are, or whatever. But like I said, Terry Funk broke that ice, and then I'm working Midnight Express and got to know Jimmy. And what they did when they were putting the matches together early in the day, some of the over guys actually had a small say so in who they were working. Okay. Now, up there, the Mario Mancini, who was famous in WWF, we had the George South, okay, pretty much with NWA, WCW in there. So you would get guys like Flair and that, they would say, put me with him, and they would get it,
Right.
But only after you paid, not paid your dues, but kind of paid your time, and they got to know you that first of all, you're not going to be no crybaby. You're not going to whine. If you get stiff, if they break your jaw in 10 places, you go up to them after the match. Thank you. Respect. And that was the secret to working steady. Isn't it?
Maurice,
if one of them got an attitude, and I seen Eddie Gilbert one day, a guy wasn't selling for Eddie, a TV show. Eddie Gilbert come back and busted that guy up against the wall. He said, "I don't want to see this son of a bitch ever again," and you never did.
Yeah, that's right.
That's when Eddie had a single with Missy Hyatt. But so, anyways, because I did what they wanted me to do, I was respectful all the time. Jimmy said, "Well, put us with Hogan." So now all of a sudden, Midnight Express, I was like one of their guys that they would want to work with, because I wasn't that heavy. I was about maybe 220, but luckily I had a trainer like Mario Mancini who taught me how to take bumps in that correctly. Okay. Now I'm paying for it right now. Okay.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Me too.
I didn't get hurt. If I did get hurt, I didn't whine or didn't cry about it. Thanked them.
Right.
And whoever was booking at the time, J.J. Dillon was up when I was first going in there and went through the Eric Bischoff thing and all them guys. But it was just so nice where Ric Flair, okay? Now, again, you and San Martino was kind of me and Flair, okay? So I'm walking down the hall at one of the matches, and Flair's coming toward me. Shit, what do I do? Do I look at him? I say hi to him?
So hard. So hard.
So he's not a friend of the show at the moment.
Right. We're walking down. I'm walking down the aisle, and Rick says, "Hi, Randy." Fuck, you know my name? Randy? You called me Ric Flair, called me Randy. And other guys like that. Sting was that way. Sting at the time he was doing a singles thing, but him and Luger were tagged up.
Yeah.
Both of them I laugh about Luger because I didn't have a problem with him, but Luger definitely lived his role. Okay. The narcissist, he loved himself. He absolutely did, So I worked with him and I worked with Sting a couple of times. And then again, same thing. Well, let us work with Hogan because we can throw him around and he won't bitch about or complain about nothing. So that's how it ended up being basically a full-time job. And you never know who's watching you. Again, I'm sure you tell your kids out there, if you're in front of 20 people or 20,000 people, you never know who that number 19 or 20.
Yeah, you put out the same effort. And so look, I just want to take a minute to explain the Guardian of Chaos Big Daddy. So this is what happened. So he knew that this show was going on. So this guy researches like crazy. I mean, he does his homework. I mean, he's a really wrestling historian and everything. So that's why he's got these specific question, Randy, what was it like to work Ivan Koloff? Because obviously he did all of his research he needed to do on Randy Hogan.
Well, there's a reason that they called him Uncle Ivan. he was like everybody's uncle, grandfather. He was the sweetest man, you know. You would never know. And as far as working him, light as a feather. I worked him in all the different Russian factions when Barry Darso was in there, and he had Nikita Koloff
right
in there.
My brother, right?
Darso, is he a trip? I love him. I was at a convention with him last year with him and Needy both. And Barry is such a nice gentleman. And again, you know, I know all the gimmicks that he ever worked. And again, here I am, and now I'm almost 60 years old, you know, doing still geeking out over him. He said, Barry Darso. And I had just had some surgery and then hobbling around with that, but he was right there to help me all. He was the nicest man. Him and Bill, I had such a good time traveling with them.
But yeah,
But the highlight of my convention is going to be with Mario Mancini. Throw it up, brother.
You know, about 6 years ago, I picked up a hobby because I started, unfortunately, started living alone, and I started baking.
I went through that 5 times.
Yeah, I did 3. So I started baking, and I was bringing them to the conventions, and I was giving them to Barry and Billy. So now when I get to a convention and Barry and Billy's there, they both look and go, I go, guys, I got it for you. Don't worry about it. I got it for you. But this is kind of it gives me goosebumps because it is so similar. It's like I had the same experience shortly in that same hallway gig with Hogan. And he's just walking down the hallway all by himself. And I'm like, oh, shit. So he goes to walk by me. He goes, hey, Eminem, what's going on? And he gives me a high five. And I'm like, oh, shit, I didn't even think. Wow. For the entire time I was there, and even when I see him now, he has never called me Mario, not one time. He was the only one that just calls me Eminem. Hey, Eminem, what's going on? That's it. That's all he calls me. So it's so similar. You know, August 9th.
He is one that I've never been able to meet.
You never met Hogan?
He lives an hour from me now. Okay. When he was up north, okay, I was down south. He came down WCW territory, okay, and I just started doing some spotty jobs, and I bought a couple of restaurants at the time. But if people say, "Gee, are you his brother? Are you his cousin? You know, why'd you steal his gimmick and all this?" I didn't. My first convention I ever did, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, was the big event in New York. And the vendor that brought me in called me out of the clear blue. I hadn't heard nothing about wrestling in 20-some years. He said, you want to do a convention? Well, shit, I didn't know there was such a thing. So I said, well, yeah, what is it? He said, well, I'll fly you in, give you a room, feed you, pay you X amount of dollars, you know, and then fly you home. I said, wow, that sounds like fun. And he said, no, I never dressed in the Randomania or the Hogan gimmick whatsoever. I had a black velvet robe with turquoise trunks, turquoise boots. Always went as Randy Hogan, which was given to me anyways. But people can't believe, well, where does he think about you doing this gimmick? Well, the only affirmation I ever got with him was maybe 2 years ago. Again, we were in Rome, Georgia, at a convention with Jimmy Hart. And, or no, it was in Albany. They had big event.
That's his right-hand man, Jimmy. So
yeah. So anyways, and Jimmy was at a table right directly across from me. And I was sitting there, me and Barry Horowitz was next to me also, Mr. Hughes. So I said, you know, I got to do it. So I walked across when it was slow. I said, Jimmy, can I get a picture taken with you? Sure, brother, come on. You know, Jimmy, he's always like a hamster on crack or something, you know.
Yeah, baby, come on, baby. Come on, baby. Yeah.
And again, you know, just very respectful. And Jimmy, thank you so much. I said, but, you know, I was a little bit nervous because I know that, you know, you're really tight with Hogan. You got other business dealings with him other than just the wrestling thing. And people ask me, and, you know, what does he think of me working off his gimmick type thing? And Jimmy said, look, he laughed. He said, not that you're the topic of conversation, but he's well aware of you. He said, anytime that he's like, he went the NWO thing, kind of started healing, then I did on the indie circuit and that, but I started healing. So he said, you've never gotten in any controversy, always kept your nose clean, everything else. So he says, we have no problem doing what you're doing. He said, you just keep on going. He says, I love the gimmicks. He said, we love the, again, it's like seeing Ric Flair for the first time. Here's Jimmy Hart, he's attached at the hip to Hogan, but we never. Oh, there you are. Popped on. But we never.
I lost you for a second.
All this time. Yeah. So when he came to WCW, they had this big ticker tape parade, at MGM Studios, I think it was. And actually, I was working, just doing some independent little stuff around town on that. And I owned a restaurant.
Oh.
Plus, I worked for a radio station. I had a little 2-minute chameleon thing where I would just give like the old dirt sheets, Well, I get an old dirt sheet and I just rattle off some of the stuff, so I thought it was important. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, when Hogan's having this press conference, they said, "Hey, do you want to go?" I said, "Yeah." I went. So there I was, and it shows me with my little notepad and everything, right in front of the stage, with him up there doing his thing. So people thought I was a plant or whatever else, but no, I really worked for a radio station. I was really doing an article on it. And I swear, maybe it's just me wanting it so much, but I was maybe not 3 rows back standing. He's on a big stage and everything. Yes, Cedar Creek, Cedar River and Cedar Creek. You got it, brother.
He really does know everything.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. Incredible guest, too, as you know.
Yes. So Hogan's doing this, looking down, and I swear he made eye contact with me.
Oh, he did?
And just kind of a nod. Not a full acknowledgement, but in my eyes, he did. He invited me to dinner and to go out with his daughter, it was just wonderful. So those are my big mark out moments in there,
Randy, I've got a question. I've got a question for you. About the time when you
mouth, but I get excited.
Yeah. About the time, remember you went into WWF as Scott Colton.
Mario.
Yeah.
Do you know
what year was that?
Do you know Scott Colton, Mario?
Yeah, I have a question about that. Is the rumors true that they made you shave off the tash?
The truth is,
that in a minute.
The truth is, I was never Scott Colton, nor was he me.
Mm-hmm.
Same turquoise trunks and boots. He shaved the mustache off. Same blonde hair. Mine was a little bit longer than his. Where that got, that's that Wikipedia stuff or whatever it is. Somebody put that on, whatever else. But no, I never met Scott Colton. He probably laughs the same thing about me.
But how did you two guys? How did Mario Mancini and Randy Hogan never meet?
Well, different territories.
You see, I was the guy that was carrying the bags off the bus. Okay, and Mario was up with the big guys going in that room and having loungers and the catering and everything. Yeah.
Listen, you want to talk about a great rib? A really good friend of mine has just walked into my office, right? And he picked up on something. It was so funny. I was crying. Now I had a match with Kamala, and Andre came out during the match with Kamala. And I did the job for Kamala. And what they cut off at the end of the match is Andre walking me back to the dressing room. Then I had a match with Bad News Brown. And Andre was introduced because it was first time back right after he did the Princess Bride. Mm-hmm. It was his first night in return back to the WWF. So they introduced him out there. He came in and shook my hand and everything. And the referee's hand. And of course, Bad News was a heel. He wouldn't shake his hand. And Bad News went over on me. Of course, there. So my buddy Lou texts me and he goes, "Let me ask you something. Why did he leave you hanging twice?" I goes, "Why did Andre?" I go, "You know what? That's a good question." I go, that's a good question. He goes, the guy stood there watching you get the shit knocked out of you twice. Why did he die? That's a good question.
Wow.
But listen, Hogan. I mean, Hogan was all right. I mean, he was very controlling. There's so many stories. I mean, Maurice, on a podcast like this, I mean, we could easily go till 9 o'clock, easily. Not wanting to do a job for Bret Hart and not want to put him over. And when I remember when Bundy came in, when Chris came in, I was his debut match. And I was sitting next to SD, and I'm like, Jesus, who's that? And they said, it's new meat for Hogan. Gang would come in, new meat for every big guy that came in that they were going to give a big push to. They were labeled as new meat for Hogan. Now, let me tell you something. If he was Colton, they would have had him shave that mustache off. Let me tell you something. There were only two places, Maurice, two. You get your boots from B&A Boot Company in Paris, Arkansas. There was nowhere else to get them. And you got your trunks from K&H, Carla and Hildegard, and it was in Ohio. That's where you got it back in the 80s. That's where you got your gear. Unless you were able to know a seamstress that'll make your stuff custom. Those are the two places where you get them from. So I'm all happy. I see Salvatore Bellomo sporting his stuff and everything. I go, I'm going to do it too. So I order a pair of Italian flag trunks, right? So I order a pair of Italian trunks. Green, white, and red. Red, white, and green. Whatever. I put them on. All right. She comes walking past me to go to the men's room. And he looks at my trunks and he goes, Mancini. I go, yeah, Sheik. You wear cheeky colors. I go, what?
Oh.
You wear cheeky. Those are Sheiky's colors, brother. I go, no, Sheik, it's the Italian flag. No, Mancini. Those Sheiky colors. I said, no, Sheik, it's the Italian. Pat. I go, what are we in the third grade? Pat. Here comes Pat Patterson. Comes walking over. Pat, Mancini, he wears Sheiky colors. Pat looks at my trunks. He goes, yeah, Mario, I can't wear those. I go, what? He goes, you can't wear those. So let me tell you something. If they had me take off a pair of Italian color flags, they would have had him shave that off in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat, they would have had him shave that off.
Well, it's funny because a lot of the guys too, they'd change their name, whatever,
Yeah.
I may be Randy Mancini, or Maurice Hogan on the next show, whatever else. But years later, this was just prior to getting into the Monday Night Wars and stuff. So I always did the Hogan. I always had the mustache, with blonde hair, everything else, getting jobbed. But the reason why I didn't have to change my name in that was they wanted to show their superiority over the Hogans of up north, the Hulk Hogan. This is what we do to Hogans down here. So, pin me, pay me type of thing, and which was fine. But that's why I never, ever changed my name. I was Randy Hogan from day one. And I got that name. A promoter gave me that up in some little bar up in Athens, Georgia. There was maybe 10 drunk soldiers out there we wrestled in front of. And it was my very first match. And the promoter says, what's your name? I said, well, Randy Franklin, because my dad's name was Frank. And he said, well, we're gonna call you Hal Hogan. You look a little bit like that Hogan, so we're gonna make you his cousin or his uncle or his nephew or something. And I said, well, whatever you want. But can we not do the Hal? I don't know who the hell they're talking about, So let's just go with the Randy. So that's actually how Randy Hogan got started. It's not like I was stealing his gimmick. This didn't happen until I had the story started earlier. when I went to the big event, my first convention, and the vendors brought me in and said, "Hey, do you have any of that Hogan gimmick stuff?" Because all I had was my turquoise in that. I said, "No, but I'll damn sure get some." So luckily, I have a good friend who's a printer, and he did Randomania T-shirts. So I had 3 or 4 different colors made. I bought some of these little skull caps and bandanas and 50 cents a pair for sunglasses and everything. And that's how that all got started. I had these beautiful turquoise boots. Now, they were custom made. I don't know who made them, a guy in Mexico. Okay. I didn't have a B&A, and even my trunks. Do you remember a guy named Ken Timms?
He sounds familiar.
Yeah, he was one of the original Hollywood blondes in that. Anyway, his wife made my first and only pair of trunks. I went through my whole career with 1 pair of trunks.
Come on, come on.
Well, let me tell you, it wasn't maybe 10 years ago. I live in this senior community here, okay? So they got a Halloween contest. So Halloween. So I got all my stuff, so I pull my robe out. I couldn't get them trunks up past my thighs because they were so small. Man, oh my God! But yeah, true story. So I had the boots were made because I wanted turquoise, and Ric Flair is the only one that I ever saw had a turquoise pair of boots. So the guy who trained me, Ted and Jerry Oates, they were big in the South. Anyways, he took measurements and sent them out to this little guy in Mexico. And my only pair of boots I ever had, I carried them right on through up until 2 years ago. And I mean, I didn't know conventions it's gonna be a one-shot or deal or whatever. So I wasn't gonna buy any new boots, but I had to do the red and yellow type thing. So I took these beautiful turquoise patent leather boots and had a lady that does this kind of stuff change the color. 13 coats of acrylic yellow paint it took to color these.
Wow.
So I still, and you will see them, brother, the original boots, the original trunks.
Well, if you work for Scott Wilder Promotions, man, you'll be jumping all over the country with this guy. He does a lot of conventions. He's a good guy to work with.
I love him. I worked with him before. My wife actually helped him out.
He's
what
the
a
best.
wonderful guy.
But yeah, he's the best. It's like because I never did these things either until Joe Bruin with the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame got a hold of me in 2013. I said, "A what?" I go, "Nobody wants to see me. I'm not going to one of those things and embarrassing myself. Nobody wants to see a jobber." He goes, "No, you're wrong." And his is the only one I've done until Scott got a hold of me. But going on the road with Scott, it's
I've seen videos.
Yeah, it's just like going on with one of the boys. There's no difference. You know what I mean? The only difference is he doesn't have a pair of boots and trunks. He didn't have a wrestling career. It doesn't matter because he's got 2x4s and tire irons in the back. He'll beat the hell out of you with anyway. So.
I think the last time you called me
with him in Demolition.
The last time you called me.
Yeah.
The last time you called me from you guys being on the road, Paul Roma told me, "I'm not going to do your podcast. You stay in your mother's basement." Now he's done 2 shows.
Yeah. So yeah, working for Scott is fantastic. I love him. I love him to death. We got a good deal on because when things are good and when things are a little complicated in my life, when things are good and we just freely go on the road, I'm going to, like I do on all my podcasts, I'm going to tell the honest truth. I don't give a damn about the money. He's my friend. We go on there. We laugh until we cry. We go to the conventions. We watch all the marks come through. Some of them come all dressed up like Dusty Rhodes and stuff. And, we eat and, he breaks my balls. I break his. Roma breaks his balls. And it's just a great time. It's just a fantastic time.
He's one of the few normal guys.
Yeah, I look forward to just spending time with him and Roma, and And the beauty of it is he knows I don't care. I mean, listen, there are no doubt there are guys, guys that are over that this is business to them. They call a certain payday to go, and they expect that payday, and they don't care if Scott makes his money back or not. All they know is this is what they said they want to get paid, and that's what they get paid, and they better get paid that. It's just such a different relationship that I have with him. It's like listen, I'd rather take a friendship over business, and I think that's why we get along so well. But the similarities, I mean, I'm a little envious because I consider Jim Cornette like a genius in this business, like a genius. And that's the only time I met him and talked to him. And I would have loved to be a daily part of him, just to pick his brain. You know what I mean? Just to be around him and learn from him. You know what I mean?
That learning tree.
So you being around Cornette all that time, man, I wish I had that. At the same time, I had Strongbow, I had Arnold Skolin, I had Gorilla Monsoon. I mean, Skolin one night, I was working with Leap and Lanny Poffo, and it was a house show, and his finish was a flying crossbody press off the top rope. So I took the bump, and I got up, and I started walking toward the rope, walking toward the corner like the zombie. Mm-hmm. And he comes off, and he hits me with flying body press, and the crowd goes. So I go back to the dressing room, and Skolin goes, amazing stuff, Randy, amazing what you learn. Skolin goes, come here. I said, what's up, Barney? Everything okay? He goes, yeah. Tomorrow night after you take the bump, when you get up, start walking backwards toward the corner. He goes, put up your leg high to turn around. And he looked at Lanny. He said, when he puts up his leg, take off the top rope. By the time he turns around, you'll hit him right there. And I was walking backwards. I put up that leg, and the minute I turned, he hit me, and he got the 3, and the place went, whoa! And I went, I'm laying down, and I'm going, holy shit. You know what I mean? Oh, my God. I'm like, I can't believe the difference. You know what I mean? I can't believe the difference between last night and tonight. Just from that, you know what I mean? So, because as I teach my students with tackles and stuff like that, I go, listen, you got to walk into a tackle or something off the top rope, because if you see the freight train coming ahead of time, are you going to stand there and wait to get hit by the train? No, you're going to get out of the way. So you can't just stand there and wait for it, right? So, it was an amazing experience. I wish I could have went where you were for a week.
And I wish I could have been where you were.
Where I was for a week. You know what I mean? Because it was, especially with Andre and everything, it's like I was told, wait till Andre talks to me first. Don't talk to him first, and you had the Junkyard Dog, and I owe SD Jones. I owe SD Jones everything. What, you were good with Dog?
I never laughed so much during a match. He'd been talking about somebody rat in the front row or something, said, why don't you give the dog a bone? Dog gotta have a bone, and he's doing all this shit while he's doing his power slam or whatever the thing was, just had you cracking up the whole time.
Yeah, let me ask you something. Did he ever make fun of Rocky Johnson when he was with you?
Never.
Oh, you got to see him do Rocky Johnson, because Rocky was the most pigeon-toed wrestler in the business. You had to see him do Rocky. He did a good Rocky Johnson, man. Oh, he did a great Rocky Johnson.
Wow.
Being around Tony Atlas and all those guys, Big Daddy asked the question. It wasn't particularly my favorite thing to do. I didn't have a good experience working with the Nasty Boys. I wasn't pleased doing it. I think they disregarded, again, another a kind of people that disregard the jobbers, a little stiff. You know what I mean? I don't know what you experienced with them, but a little stiff. More knobs than Sags. Sags was okay. I think he was the good one. It was just Knobs was just real. I mean, I say hello to him when I see him and everything, and he's been in bad health, but and don't just please Scott Wilder. Don't even come up on the screen. All right, that's just a rib between you and us. You and I. But he was a little stiff. You know what I mean? I don't know what you remember, but to answer Big Daddy's question, you worked with the Nasty Boys, right?
I did. Kathy. Excuse me. Kathy. How do you get my voice? Thank you.
He still has one of those.
Yeah.
Door. Jesus.
He does kind of look like Hogan. He does kind of look like Hogan, though, doesn't he?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
does
Well,
look like him.
Let me
No,
tell you,
no,
sister.
no.
Answer that door.
Yeah, he does look like him. You know what
No,
they
no.
should have did? You know
No,
what?
Hulk Hogan looks like Randy Hogan.
Well, yeah. Listen, they do so many screwed up things. It would have been over so big if they just brought you in
With Gilbert.
Yeah, Les Gilbert.
On Hogan's side. You know what would have been great if Hogan's music started, and would have had the fans right here, because he would have came out. And they would have got it at first. They still would have done he would have had to get 3/4 into the ring before people went, what? You know what I mean? And it would have been something. They should have did a tag team with him or something. It would have went over. They would have bought it. It's like Howard Finkel used to say to Pat Patterson. I'd be sitting there listening. You go, Pat, just every now and then. Just have a jobber go over. Just a guy that's over, just have him get him by surprise in a small package. Just every now and then. And they just wouldn't buy into it. So,
Nice.
you know, we need to do a part 2 on this, Maurice. And we left out Edgeline.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to talk about Edgeline, which is very important. Very important to me to talk about Edgeline.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is, because like I'm pushed for time tonight, as you know. Because
here we go. Do you know who we are, brother? Do you
I
realize
know.
who you're talking to right here?
Maurice doesn't give 2 shits.
Yeah.
He's an Irishman. He doesn't give a fuck.
But what I want to do before we go is plug what you're doing this weekend, where you're going to meet. Is you going to meet for the first time in person this weekend?
I have a glitch I'm trying to work out with Scott when it comes to my daughter. So I'm trying to get there and see if I could leave on a Friday. I'm not too sure. My daughter said I had some complications up in Presque Isle, Maine. But you know what? You don't have to worry about that, because when I tell you that Scott Wilder has become a brother to me, there's no doubt he will call me tonight and say, Mancini, if you have a problem, I will make damn sure on the next wrestling convention that you and Randy are together. In fact, I want to sit at the same table. I want to share a table with him.
Me too.
I want to share a table with him. One table, not 2 tables.
I can't wait. I want to walk in.
I want to share a table with him.
Okay, the stratosphere is full. Everybody's looking for Mancini and Hogan.
Yeah.
And here comes Mancini strutting down the aisle, and who's behind him carrying his little carpet bags? That's what I'm looking for at WrestleCade, baby. With
Mancini,
North Carolina.
Share a table with him.
Yeah. Mancini has never fought Hogan.
Only in battle royals.
Wow.
Only in battle. In fact, Hogan and I had a thing for about 4 battle royals. I said, I only want you to throw me out. And he said, okay. But yeah, so I stayed away from Andre all the time. But I didn't get to tell that story either when I froze, because I didn't know there was a Legends Battle Royal. I had no idea. I had no clue. And Bobo Brazil came in. Killer Kowalski came in. Okay. Strongbow came in. And then after Strongbow, Bruno came in. And I was in the ring. I was like, SD Jones I wasn't selling for him. He goes, what's wrong with you? I go, I'm in the ring with Bruno. I can't believe I went nuts. I couldn't believe it. So
God, we get so many stories, don't we? So many stories.
Big Daddy,
story. Talk about
listen, Big Daddy, if you want to manage myself and Hogan, we will work again, but we ain't taking any bumps. Not one. I won't.
Why don't you work against Roma and Ric Flair, against 2 of the Horsemen?
Well, me and Flair's the same age, so that'd work.
Book it, Scott Wilder. Book it, Scott Wilder Promotions. All right, Maurice, I don't want to get you stressed out.
Yeah.
Randy, it was an honor, man. It really was. I couldn't wait to do
Oh
this.
my Mario, I so look
I
forward
think-
to seeing you the weekend.
I
And
think we'll do
hope
this
you get to
again
go
next week.
Do your
Yeah, I
daughter
hope so,
thing, but
too.
yet I want to see you an extra day there too. So
Yeah, I hope so too. Well, we got to do part 2. There's so much more. There's so much more.
I didn't even get to ask you the sheet.
I told you.
Yeah.
You didn't believe me.
You got it covered. I know, but I always have to make sure. Right, guys. Thanks a million for tonight, and it was
All right,
absolutely
guys.
brilliant listening
Maurice,
to the two of
thank
you
you, brother.
reminisce.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mario.
Thanks, guys.
you, my
All
brother.
right.